Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to, do you have the printouts?
Yeah, I got them. Go ahead.
What meeting number is this? I'm sorry, I'll let you cover that portion of it. Welcome everyone to the College Complex for today, June 6th, 2026. My name is Chris, I'll be your host. Behind the computer right now is Tim. And of course, we have Charlie joining us virtually. Looking forward to tonight's debate about the existence of God, the arguments for and against. So it should be a very enlightening discussion this evening. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody that the rules are be respectful to one another, no personal attacks, and one fool at a time. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Charlie so he can give us the welcoming announcements.
Okay, all right. Welcome everyone to meeting number 3,862 of the College of Complexes, the playground for people who think. Now I've got a couple of announcements. From now on in, we've adjusted the schedule. By the way, we have 12 upcoming events, programs scheduled. The next open dates are December 5 and 19th. So we're booked for 12 upcoming programs. And another thing, unlike tonight, we're going to be affixed every 2 weeks. Meaning from now on in, regardless of the month, none of this first and third Sundays, it's for every 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from tonight, there'll be another program. 2 weeks after that, 2 weeks after that. And that'll be the permanent schedule from now on in, after a little period here of experimentation. Okay, now, although I am not a capitalist, I will give an advertisement for our upcoming program next week. Veteran speaker Michael Derrick, veteran of the College of Complexes, will be talking about Medicare, Medicaid, ACA, what's left of it, and basically single payer health insurance. So it's the health care of the United States policy will be the target. Looks like he's going to cover all the aspects of it. Okay, that'll be it for tonight since we're a little late. Looking forward to the debate. Take it away, Chris.
Thank you, Charlie.
As you can see, we got bookings all the way through to every 2 weeks. We're going to be skipping July 4th, but I'll have the schedule is posted online. Okay. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, Kelvin. And
I have an announcement.
Go ahead, make the announcement.
Okay.
Come on up front.
Oh, yeah, please come in front of the camera.
Yeah.
So we do have an announcement from the on-site location.
Yeah, you could. You're going to be talking to you're talking to the computer right now.
My name is Dan Weinberg.
Louder, Dan. You're talking.
My name is Dan Weinberg. I have a book to sell, brand new, out this last month, April. Only $15. It's full of politics and economics and nature. There's some poetry, and there's a lot of art like that, very colorful. It's put together by a student of the Chicago school. She doesn't shake as much as I do. She didn't shake. I do. Anyways, it's only $15. Very much worth it. I hope you can buy one. Thank you. That's my announcement.
All right, start the debate.
Thanks very much. Okay, since we do have a late start, if we have any other announcements, we'll save those until afterwards. So tonight, I don't have the program.
It's okay.
We've got two presentations here on opposing views of the existence of God. We've got Derrick, Michael, Reid, and also Kelvin and Ashton. Do we have any idea of which one we're going to start with, Charlie?
Mr. Reid.
Okay.
20 minutes each, followed by 10 minutes, then questions.
All right, that being said, Mr. Reid, the floor is yours.
Should I begin?
Yes, go ahead, Derrick. Go ahead, begin.
My name's Derrick Michael Reid. I'm the author of a book entitled Everything Seen and Unseen, God in the Quantum Domain. And what I did is I combined theology, genetics, quantum mechanical and cosmological physics and consciousness into a single theory of everything. That is to say, I reverse engineered the cosmos in 60 pages. I'm an engineer, a lawyer, a military scientist, a geopolitical analyst, a monetarist, etc., and I'm a candidate for the 2028 presidential office. If the Libertarians nominate me, we will win because I'm the only one in the country that is offering what the vast majority of Americans want to buy. Today, we're having a debate on the existence of God, and I am the proponent. My proof will be based upon science and law. We first start with some judicial notices, conclusions of law. Number one, from nothing, nothing comes. Things are formed by
Derrick, can you hear
random
me?
processes.
Derrick, can you hear me?
Yes. Should I continue?
Go ahead, Derrick. You
Things
there?
are created by intelligent design. Random processes is the essence of materialism that supports atheism. Intelligent design is the basis of spiritualism that supports theism.
I'm going to have to reset.
Are we going to start over? The next point of law. God is eternal, the Alpha and the Omega, always was and always will be. God is the uncaused cause of the universe. These are the definitions with which I will address the subject matter. One of the problems with science is that they have a problem with one-offs. That is to say, they cannot analyze a singular event. There must be repetition for them to do their measurements and analysis. And what we want to do is talk about the one-off events that are critical to understanding the argument. And they are the Big Bang, abiogenesis, the initial creation of life, the resurrection of Jesus Christ, evolution, and the Shroud of Turin. And so I'm going to start with the Big Bang. Now, physicists can use their models to run the clock backward. They can tell you in 1555 in Venice, there was a solar eclipse. And they can keep running the clock back tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of years. They know how to do it, and they do it successfully. And what they have determined is that the four quantum forces, gravity, the strong nuclear, the weak nuclear, and the electromagnetic, were once combined. And they were combined at T0, the instance of creation. Now, they cannot wind their clock back precisely to T0. Their equations blow up because of infinity. And that suggests to me they are approaching the infinity of God. And what happens if you go back to the Planck era, the first trillionth of a second after the Big Bang, when the forces were combined in a grand unification, the universe started to expand. And what happened first was that the gravity force broke away. The universe expands some more, then the strong nuclear expanded some more, then the weak nuclear separated from the electromagnetic force, and then you have the four forces. And they know this through their computer modelings. But again, once they approach T0 within a trillionth of a second, their equations blows up because of infinities. Now, what we know from this is that the entire quantum mechanical mathematical order of the universe was created instantaneously at T0. There was no time for some random process to occur. It happened at T0. And this goes to the biblical reference of, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, as the universe expanded, it cooled down. It was a plasma, a hot plasma, where all quantum particles were just shooting around. There was no real order, but eventually protons, neutrons formed, and as it cooled a little bit more, electrons were finally able to bind to protons, forming hydrogen. At that point, the universe became transparent, and light could be emitted. And this occurred at about 400 million years after the Big Bang. And that is why we have the cosmic background radiation. And it was the key discovery that convinced physicists that there was a beginning. And of course, these egotistical, narcissistic physicists got all upset about it, because that meant that there was direct proof of God through intelligent design. There's only two possible ways: random processes or intelligent design. And these narcissistic physicists did not want to be knocked off their intellectual pedestals as being the top intellectual entities in the universe by some God. And that's why they vigorously oppose it. It's because of their egotism and their narcissistic behavior. The next thing we talk about is abiogenesis, the creation of life itself. Now, for a protein to be formed, it has to have a certain number of amino acids, particular ones, and in a particular sequence. And when you do the mathematical probabilities, it's a protein could be formed by a random process in 1 in 10 to the 90th power. There's only 10 to the 80th power atoms in the entire universe, which means you have a billion times greater than that. So it's like picking out randomly 1 in 10 to the 90th atoms and saying that, well, that is possible. And of course it is impossible. And if it's impossible to occur by a random process, it must necessarily be created by intelligent design, because there's only two ways you can have things come into being: random processes or intelligent design. The next one briefly is evolution. Now, Darwin got it partially right to the extent of adaptations. You have, if you only mate sheeps with thick wool, you eventually get thicker wool sheeps. These are adaptations. They are not morphological changes. In order for there to be morphological changes, you must have significant restructuring of the DNA. Now, Darwin, in his naivety, and he admitted that he did not know how it really happened, random mutations always destroy morphologies. That is to say that when ions from the universe strike a DNA strand and causes it to change, that is destructive. It is never constructive. And it's like taking your computer operating system and start randomly switching bits, and you'll find how quickly your operating system is destroyed by random mutations. And Darwinism, in terms of evolution of morphological changes, has been finally rejected by the biological community. They said that never happened. And that, by the way, is similar to the multiverse and string theory. String theory is finally being discredited, and the multiverse and string theory came out of the narcissistic physicist's mind desperately trying to find an alternative to the origin of the universe, and so they came up with that. And what we now know is that in terms of the uncaused cause, God, we know that God is timeless. He existed before time, immaterial, spaceless, all-powerful. The universe is pretty big. All-knowing. The universe is finely tuned to support life. If any of the physical parameters are changed just a little bit, and I'm talking one part in 40 digits, you change it a little bit, the universe doesn't form, atoms don't form, there's no possibility of life. So the universe is finely tuned to support human life. Also, God is personal. There was a personal decision 13.8 billion years ago to create the universe. God is also good. He allowed mankind to exist, to love, to procreate, and to have communion with him in the happiest lifestyles imaginable. Now I'd like to come to the resurrection of Jesus. The first thing I would note is that from a conspiracy perspective, you have 12 disciples who traveled around the world, and they maintained that they saw the resurrected Jesus. And each and every one of them was willing to die, and did die, to promulgate that message to the world, to save the world from oblivion. Now, in criminal law, you can pretty easily tear apart two conspirators. You get 12 conspirators, you can definitely break them apart. They never was able to break the 12 disciples preaching the good word based upon what they saw. Now, from an evidentiary standpoint, the biblical record is admissible as a historic record. It's an exception to the hearsay rule. So the Bible and all of the collateral information regarding what happened at the time of Jesus comes into the record. And that includes the disciples going around. That includes the works that Jesus did. And so we can be fairly certain that these 12 men believed what they thought they saw. Without proving what they saw, we know that they believed it. We know that Jesus existed, that the disciples saw the resurrected Christ, and they promulgated the good news for the rest of their lives, and were willing to die in affirmation. Now, there is one piece of hard evidence that remains from the time of Jesus that I think is very significant, and that is the Shroud of Turin. They have finally been able to accurately, to the extent possible, analyze it. And what they have determined is several things. They found micro fragments of DNA. Now, the Shroud of Turin, the burial cloth that Jesus traveled, I think, first up to Turkey, then up to Odessa, then through Eastern Europe, landed in southern France, and then eventually to Turin in Italy. And they've been able to find DNA fragments of races of people that followed that track. The second thing they were able to do was find seeds and plant material that is indigenous to the Levant area where Jesus Christ lived. And the weave of the Shroud of Turin is that which was used at the time of Christ. And so you have DNA, you have plant material, and you have weave, all consistent with it being the Shroud of Turin. But what lately has been found to be absolutely remarkable is the manner with which the image of Christ was burned into the surface layer, I'm talking nanometers now, that gave rise to a three-dimensional type of holographic image of Christ. And that, and the current thinking now by the top physicists in the world is that there was some kind of a quantum energy event that burned the image of Christ into the Shroud of Turin, and it survives today. And so, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I think that I have presented to you a case for the existence of God. The standard of proof in this debate is more likely than not, and I pray for your verdict. Thank you very much.
Okay, I guess we go to Kelvin. And Kelvin, when you're ready, go ahead.
Hello, yes. I think most people know me here. I'll just do a brief recap. I don't have a great deal of, I don't have any academic qualifications. I am a humble carpenter from the provinces. I do have one thing over my opponent. I was named after a scientist, while he is named after a saint. So I suppose it's fitting for me to take the course of rationalism. Just a little thing. I just did a little Google check. By the way, you know, of course, Mr. Reid, that the Turin Shroud was carbon dated, and it was found to be of between 1260 and 1390 AD, not of the time of Christ. I know that is the sign. That is. It doesn't matter what the weave is or what DNA you found. It wasn't that. It's not that old. There were an awful lot of relics knocking around at that time. There was enough splinters of the true cross to make a Spanish galleon. Anyway, first off, let me explain what atheism, theism, and deism is. An atheist is somebody who doesn't believe in God. Basically, we kind of. I'm going to speak quickly because we don't have a great deal of time. We don't have a great deal of time for the. We resent the term of an atheist because there is no term to say what people who do not believe in hobgoblins or leprechauns or fairies or unicorns or any other mythical supernatural beings, but suddenly we have to have a complete term to denote our non-belief. But anyway, we'll accept it. And most atheists will, if they have to be put into a corner, including people like Richard Dawkins, will say that they are technically agnostic, but then you're talking about probability, and the probability that most atheists think of there being a supernatural being is so small as make it insignificant. Right, so theism and deism. Right, well, theism, I think we're all pretty much aware of. That's the usual Christian, Judeo-Christian, Abrahamic, and also Hindu, polytheist religions. That's to believe in a divine being and a religion that goes with it. A deist is someone that believes there's a God but doesn't go with the whole Bible thing, which is It's a reasonable assumption, thing to go. The founding fathers were mostly were deists. Thomas Jefferson was a deist. Benjamin Franklin was a deist. Thomas Paine was a deist. In fact, Jefferson wrote a whole edited the New Testament where he removed all of the miracles and spiritual hocus pocus from the New Testament and just edited out and published the New Testament without any of the water into wine, Lazarus kind of stuff, right? So anyway, so that's a deist. But the thing is, deism doesn't come from a vacuum. We don't get the concept of God without the whole theology. I say a deist believes that there's you can make a case for perhaps a divine creator and stuff like that. What you can't do, and even one of the greatest theological minds in history, Thomas Aquinas, couldn't do, is you can't. It's impossible to make that leap from there being a creator to say, well, that creator A is still in existence, B, that creator cares about its creation, and C, went visited a whole bunch of illiterate goat herders in the desert, told them what part of their genitals to remove, where they can put those genitals, when they can put their genitals, what to wear, what to eat, subjugate women, and the whole vast number of Judaic laws that comes around, and fairly Christian law as well. Now, the evidence that you put forward to comes from what most people call the Bible, what I call the talking snake book, right? Because you have, in the beginning, God made the world and the universe, and then he decided to make man out of clay. Well, okay. Then he saw that man was happy and he made woman. Oh, well, okay. And then a talking snake came along, talked the woman into eating of the tree of knowledge. Notice it's a tree of knowledge. Self-improvement is not something that theists like very much. They like to keep people ignorant. So it's a tree of knowledge that was evil and sent us away from the Garden of Eden, right? And then and that went along. And then you get the biggie one, right? And that's Abraham and Isaac. And you get this thing, and this continues on all the way through theism. This is why it's so dangerous, right? You have this idea that this guy is so pious that he will sacrifice his only son, his firstborn son, on an altar, put a knife right through his heart. Well, if you want to know what I think about that, you can find me on Highway 61, all right? But because of this covenant, then there's a whole ritual of blood sacrifice that stretches all the way. So you've got the Abrahamic book, which is the Old Testament, which is full of slavery and genocide and misogyny, a lot of misogyny, a little bit of homophobia, but not as much as there is genocide and slavery. Then you get this whole Abrahamic book, and then you get the ends, right? You get the Talking Snake book 2.0, which is the Gospels or the New Testament, where it's all right. What I call it the hippie biography, right? So you've got a hippie biography of this guy, really cool dude that's all full of love and for our neighbor and the golden rule, lots of good stuff. But the thing is, Christians, they didn't ditch the whole slavery, genocide stuff. Oh no, that's all taken on board. So, pardon me. If you take on board the Judeo-Christian religion, you have to, by nature, take on the stuff that says all the other stuff that justifies slavery and genocide and misogyny and all that stuff, right? You take all that. They didn't ditch that. They said, okay, but we're touchy-feely. So you'd think, okay, well, that's a start, isn't it? You've got a religion that's all about love and caring about people. So since then, we must have had a really lovely time, just as much as the Jews have had a really nice time after being a chosen people. We must have had a really great time since Christianity, apart from we didn't. Right? For 2,000 years, we've been at each other's throats because we believe in a different branch of the Talking Snake book than you do. Pardon me. Crusades, sectarian violence. Hold on. Well, I know I'm being rather irreverent of people's theological beliefs here, but I make no apology for that, because Christianity has been very, very far from being respectful of anybody else's beliefs over the years, whether they be South American Indians, Protestants, or somebody, or anybody, Muslims, Hindus. They don't get, you know, they're better to have a dead pagan than a live one, you know. And it's been used to justify colonial and imperialistic powers over there. Also, the religion, when you look back at the history of religion, it's incredibly tribal. It is very much dependent upon geography and what culture you were grown into. Now, Mr. Reid talked about multiverses and string theory, and you know, the world of physics is torn about this. Not everybody agrees. But there's one thing you will notice about, if you look at a map of what physicists adhere to, what ideas, the multiverse, or Everettonians, I think they're known as in the theoretical physics world, that map will be totally scattered. You will not have a whole bunch of physicists in Karachi that believe one thing, and a whole lot of physicists in Princeton that believe something else, and a whole lot of physicists in Dubai that believe something else. It's not geographical. It's not tribal. Whereas if you look at theological truths, Mr. Reid is a Christian, which is fair enough, but he's a Christian because he grew up in a Christian country, a part of a Christian culture. He's being indoctrinated from the get-go. Now, Mr. Reid said a few times that man was made in God's image. Well, if you remove God from the equation, then you get to the more interesting and you get the more logical conclusion, which is actually more provable by empirical facts, that actual fact, God is made in the image of the men that created him. So, for example, the God of the Abrahamic religion is warlike and territorial. The God of some kind of hippy-dippy spiritual person, like George Harrison, perhaps like that, is very loving and stuff like that. And Mr. Reid, surprise, surprise, has his idea of a God is some type of celestial supreme engineer. Well, that's a big surprise, isn't it? Now, over the years, religion has not only been, it's been detrimental, it's been incredibly dangerous. There's the wars, the inquisitions, the torture. I think it was, who was it said here? Let me just forget. Well, with or without religion, you would have good people that do good things, and evil people that do evil things. But for good people to do evil things, that takes religion. It's incredibly dangerous. That Abrahamic idea of putting a child on an altar has not gone away. If you go to Jerusalem, you will see the Dome of the Rock. The most significant thing you can see in Jerusalem is a big gold dome, and that's where Muslims believe that Abraham went to sacrifice Isaac. And as I was been to Jerusalem. As I looked around as an atheist, I realized one thing. They say that in Chicago you're nobody until you've rubbed somebody out. Well, in Jerusalem you're nobody until you put a child on the altar, right? And religions all over have done it, whether it be Jehovah's Witnesses refusing blood transfusions, whether it be Mother Teresa trying to ban condoms in India. I'm sure a lot of people would think that India has a lot of problems, but too much contraception is not one of them. And they're always willing to put children on the altar. And in fact, you were nobody in Jerusalem until you put a kid on the altar, right? Every one of them does. Catholic Church, every one of them, Judaism, the whole lot. Everyone. And every Sunday, they recreate this blood sacrifice in a mass. It's ridiculous if we were to introduce this without knowing what it was. This would never get past people. So a guy in a dress recreates a blood sacrifice, right, in front of a guy being in a loincloth being tortured to death. Yeah, that sounds a great. Bring the kids. Come on, yeah, bring the kids. Bring the kids. So over the years, religion has been used to justify slavery, genocide, misogyny. If you look back, let's look how old-fashioned it's been. If you look back from the 1700s backwards, you will only find one woman that wasn't aristocracy or royalty that's made it to the history books, and that was Joan of Arc. When you get to the 1700s and we stop talking so much about how many angels could dance on the head of a needle, then you get men like Thomas Paine and Jefferson talking about freedom and how to achieve it and the rights of men. When we stop talking, later in the 1800s, when we stop talking about the nature of the Trinity, start talking about the nature of the atom, then you get, we start to get great writers like the Bronte sisters and Jane Austen. And then later on, we get people like Madame Curie. Where was the Madame Curie when the theists were in charge? Where were the great female thinkers before the 1700s that made it to the history books? They were repressed because we had a repressive society. Who repressed that society? Christianity. Since we have ditched Christendom, scientifically and technologically, we've grown leaps and bounds. Now, before thoughts. Now, this danger of religion, it continues up right to this day. You have, at the moment, in your country, people who are supposed to be your representatives who are actively working towards an apocalypse. They believe, and there's a bit at the end of the hippie biography, which I call the acid trip, which is Revelations. They believe that applies to now, and they're including your Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, believes that is true and is actually working towards it. I think that's bloody dangerous. Right? If I want to live next door to somebody that thought the best thing that happened to the building was it burned down, but you've got elected representatives that are actively working towards an apocalypse. Why? Because the talking snake book told them so. This is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I'm not here to prove there is no God. Because I tell you for what, the onus is not on atheists to prove there's no God. Just like it's in a court of law, the onus is not to prove innocence. The onus is to prove guilt. Now, if you think there's a supernatural being, put some empirical evidence down. I can see. I have read your book, Mr. Reid. I saw no empirical evidence. I saw the assumption that there was a divine creator. There was no evidence whatsoever. And I say, if there was a divine creator, his evidence has not been shown. That all-knowing, all-knowing, all-powerful creator of yours is this guy that also created cancer. That created worms that make children blind. And you were talking about evolution. You said random things don't create new things. Well, explain to me how malaria worked, because it's one of the biggest killers that mankind's ever known. Right? What happened was we fought malaria. First thing we did, we found quinine, which was good at treating malaria. Next thing you know, we went to DDT. Let's kill the mosquitoes, blitz them. Well, we did that, and we also killed all the predators that fed on the mosquitoes. And then guess what? A random mutation, yes, one of those, Mr. Reid, came along, and one of those malaria mosquitoes became resistant to DDT. And, you know, mosquitoes being randy little bastards that they are, so there was millions of these buggers. And guess what? The predators were gone as well. So the problem was worse. So every time we try to have a go at this disease, that random mutation, evolution, pesky little thing that it is, has got in the way. Well, you think evolution being so powerful, well, wouldn't you think that humans might evolve so we're not so susceptible to malaria? Wonder if there was any humans that were. Well, guess what there is. Have you ever heard of a condition called sickle cell anemia? It's a very debilitating genetic disease. Most people don't live past their 30s who've got it. But guess what? It's immune to malaria. And that random genetic mutation has caused that particular adaptation to be widespread in Africa and in certain parts of southern Europe. It's not very good if you live in Chicago or Cincinnati, but if you live in a very high malarial area, it's bloody handy. Right? There's one of the questions I would like to ask Mr. Reid. I don't know if he's ever heard of Karl Popper's fabrication theory. That basically states, in any scientific theory, there's the first thing that any scientist will do is try and disprove what he's saying. So the first thing you look for is possible ways to disprove it. And if something cannot be disproven, then Karl Popper maintains that it's a fabrication, it's a theory, it's not scientific. It doesn't mean it's not necessarily true, it just means it's not scientific. I'll give you for an example. When Einstein postulated his theory of gravitational forces warping the space-time continuum, he said, the next time there's an eclipse, you'll be able to see two stars up behind the sun. If I'm right. If I'm wrong, you won't. Well, guess what? Eclipse came out a few years later. He was right, and he got proved. But he could have been proven wrong if those stars weren't there. Now, another one of the great fallacies that the creationists and theists do is they are very, very, very loath to say, we don't know, right? Physicists, scientists will say we don't know when they don't know. They go, that's where the interesting bit is. That's where the real science is. When you don't know something, that's where the fun is, right? But theists, they know everything, right? Now, you talked about the Big Bang before. Most theoretical physicists will be honest and say, well, we don't know what happened at a certain point. We can theorize, we can surmise, but we don't know for sure. The only people that say they know for sure are theists. And if people, they weren't there at the time, so if they say they know for sure, they're lying. Because they don't. right? Um, it's that authoritarian certainty, which is so incredibly vain. Really, I'm so tempted to say vanity, vanity, all is vanity, because they are always convinced that they're right. Even when they're pulling the flesh off people in the name of God, they are so convinced they're right. When they're burning people in caves, they are so convinced they're right, and that's what makes them dangerous. The best thing that America ever did was the founding fathers divorced itself from religion and didn't have an established religion. The attempts by the Christian nationalists to take over the government is probably one of the worst ideas that's ever been mooted in your country, and I think you should resist it to the end. The introduction of the Ten Commandments into Texas schools is a mistake. It's sectarian. It's divisive, and you should resist it to the utmost. I'm willing to I'm willing to give the floor up now for any questions if anybody wants to speak. Hello?
Calvin, you there? We can still hear you.
Okay, yeah, all right. Let me see what else I might miss here. Oh yeah, okay. We'll talk about creationism, right? Now it's quite a natural thing to assume. If you, for example, you take a caveman, right, living in a cave, and he's got his things. When he looks at the axe that he's made, he says, "I don't make an axe."
Still there, Calvin? We can still hear you, Calvin.
Yeah. Maybe. Right, maybe.
Cannot hear him. Somewhat wrong with Kelvin's sound.
Yeah, he has to tap the unmute.
Yeah. All right. Calvin, you're not coming through. Not coming through, Calvin. He's having trouble with his microphone.
How's that?
He's having some trouble with the sound.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can, Calvin.
All right. So you've got a caveman, and he thinks, well, when I make an axe or a knife or a spear, it's for a purpose. So everything around me, so that cave that suits me so well must have been made for me by something, some being. It's a natural way to go, but it's also quite dangerous because if you take, for example, the idea of a puzzle. Now, I'm going to ask you to stretch your imagination a little bit here, but if the other side can have talking snakes and donkeys, I can have a sentient puzzle, right? So you have a puzzle, and the puzzle thinks to itself, "Oh my goodness, there must be a heaven above that made this hole for me. It fits so perfectly. Every bit of it is just right. The Lord must love me to make this hole so beautifully for me. Every bit of it touches beautifully." Now, the problem with Mr. Puddle is, I'm not sure he can do much about it. While he's laying around smugly thinking how the Lord made this hole perfectly for him, the sun is shining and he's disappearing gradually as he evaporates. And his existence will soon be no more. And his divine hole will just be another hole in the road, which is a little bit of a metaphor for the fact that we all think that people who think that God made the world for them are busy destroying the planet that they so revere, and killing species by the thousands. But that's what happens when you when you think something belongs to you and you're not just looking after it. Right, next thing. All right, yes, let me say. Sorry, I have got notes down here. That's why. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
You're about done with your time.
Okay. Well, I'll leave you. As I say, the onus is not on atheism to disprove God. The onus is on theism to prove that there is. If I say I've got fairies in the bottom of the garden, it's on me to prove that I have, not on you to disprove that I haven't.
Okay,
Do I get a rebuttal?
we now go 10 minutes and 10 minutes each.
Yes, as a matter of fact,
May I speak?
Yes,
one moment, please.
okay.
Just a few points.
10 minutes, Derrick.
The good gentleman mentioned the Shroud of Turin. What happened there was that there was a fire in Europe and it burned the outer edges of the shroud. And the nuns there repaired it. And that's why the first carbon dating snipped samples from the edge of the Turin, which were the repair job in the Middle Ages. And it is only recently that they realized that the repair work had been done. And so they resampled. And what I had to say is now considered to be true. The good gentleman is operating from an exceedingly ignorant position, as we all are. The human mind is not capable of understanding the why or the how of quantum mechanics. What we see is an illusion, and we operate with a fairly primitive mind in 4 dimensions, 3 in space, 1 of time. And it is very easy for people to view the conduct of men and then transpose that to a God. And that's, I think, one of the fundamental fallacies of my opponent's argument. But in any event, he was technically wrong. As far as the viruses are concerned, they have not shown it is through a random process. And it could be more like gene splicing or adaptations, again, with the thick sheet. The problem is that nobody understands quantum mechanics, reality. Nobody understands it. We do not know the how and the why. We can measure things and we can quantify things, but we cannot tell you the why or the how. Now, consciousness is the image of God. Not the form, not the physical form, but the consciousness. And for example, when making a decision in the morning, are you going to have coffee or are you going to have tea? It must have to do with the collapse of a quantum wave function, which is a probabilistic function that says that, well, 25% of the time he chooses tea or something like that. And so the mind is limited to the brain, and there are a certain number of quantum particles within the brain that can give rise to consciousness. And it also would give rise to ghosts and spirits. The good gentleman bases his arguments on what man has done. That is not the issue. The issue that was presented before I started was the existence of God and proving that. Now, God's mind is infinite based upon an infinite singularity. The infinity's blowing up at T0, whereas human minds are very minute. And we do not have the capacity ever to understand quantum mechanics. There have only been a few great theories. We had James Maxwell with electromagnetism. We had Borg with the quantum mechanical states of atoms, relativity from Einstein, the uncertainty principle, the Pauli exclusion principle, Schrodinger's superposition equation, and finally Derrick with his quantum relativity equations. That was 100 years ago. Science has not materially advanced in 100 years. And Derrick was quite a character. I mean, talk about a recluse pondering the world and everything, and he came up with that. We have not significantly advanced in terms of fundamentally understanding what reality is. And so when my friend speaks, he talks in terms of evaluating the conduct of man, not whether or not God exists. And so I discount practically everything he said because it is based upon the conduct of man. Man has a limited intellectual capacity. When an individual receives the Spirit from God, the man can misinterpret it. And when you are reading scriptures, it can again be misinterpreted. Galileo said the planets evolve around the sun. They convicted him for heresy. 300 years later, he was exonerated by the church. And so trying to prove the existence of God based upon the conduct of man, I think is just something to throw you off without focusing on the heart of the issue. And I went through it in a scientific way, and I addressed it at the deepest form of reality that a human mind is capable of doing, and that is at the quantum level. Now, and let me give you an example of the defectiveness of man, so to speak. In the Bible, of course, let's go to Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, that's kind of sounds like the Big Bang, what the narcissistic physicists are so afraid about. Then he said, let there be light. And that's kind of like the cosmic radiation background, but it wasn't described as such. And then they talked about the ocean, and then the trees and the forest, and then the animals, and then the creation of man. Now, knowing that there's a transceiver intellectual failing of man, trying to interpret the spirit to begin with, for an accurate transcription of the word of God, and the interpretation of that transcription. In both cases, you have two folds failing, and human beings have limited minds, and they are inherently defective. Practically everything my opponent said was a red herring because he did not address the fundamental science that we know about in terms of proving the existence of God. As far as the multiverse is concerned, again, that was made up in desperation by theoretical physicists. It can never be proved, and it is now being widely discredited. So I think that I win the debate by default. The gentleman failed to address the scientific and legal arguments for the existence of God. He basically randomly spoke to different things about humanity. That was never the issue. I never said that man was always good. And you don't need to prove it because I'll stipulate to it. But if we talk in terms of proving scientifically to the best of our abilities at this point in time, I think that the audience must render a verdict that I have successfully proven the existence of God. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reid.
Can I come back and answer that?
Yeah.
Yes, please do.
Calvin.
So, Mr. Reid.
Okay. You have no argument against.
Kelvin, I'm going to introduce you. You have 10 minutes to respond to your opponent.
All right. I will totally agree with you that mankind is imperfect and often very, very bad. Now, here's the thing. You maintain that there is an all-powerful being called God that is all-knowing and all-powerful, right? Okay. Well, those people doing those evil things, well, they said, they prayed every day, sometimes 5 times a day if they were Muslim. The guys that flew into the Twin Towers, they prayed 5 times a day. You think that this almighty, all-powerful God might just whisper in their ear when they're about to kill somebody, excuse me, killing people's not nice. Don't do it. No. Thousands of years. Do you know what prayer is, Mr. Reid? Prayer is the silence that an 8-year-old boy hears when his priest is abusing him. That's where your powerful God is. It's totally absent. There is no evidence of his divine intervention. And if he can't intervene, what bloody good is he? And also, while I'm here, this whole theist idea that we have to worship God all the time sounds rather dubious to me. I mean, somebody that created a universe still needs to be adored and worshipped. Sounds a bit narcissistic to me, but never mind. Is that what your eternity in heaven will consist of? Total obedience and total adoration? Count me out. I'd rather live in North Korea. At least you can die and escape it. So when you say the word, but every one of those, I mean, you can only go by what they say, and you can only go by what all the religions say that they were. I mean, you take somebody like, for example, Sir Thomas More, right? This is what your great theists, when people like you guys were in charge of the country as opposed to just being on the sidelines. In my country, right? In England, about 300 years ago, maybe no, a bit more, about 4 maybe. You could be tortured to death, put on a rack, flayed alive, for the heinous crime of reading the Bible in English. And the guy who ordered that was a guy called Sir Thomas More, right? Over 200 people were killed for that crime, were tortured to death. And Thomas More was praying to your almighty God every day. God didn't say, excuse me, don't do that. It's not nice. God didn't say it. What was wrong? Did he not have the right email address? Was it, did he incorrect format on his prayer communication? No, more to that. But anyway, that was so long ago. Oh, by the way, Sir Thomas More was made a saint in 2000. In case you're wondering, he's now the patron saint of politicians. So all of that things that you say is only down to mankind. This is the no true Scotsman argument. Or if you want to be Chicagoan, the no true Chicagoan would put ketchup on a hot dog. They weren't really Christian. The Borgias weren't really Christian. Thomas More wasn't really Christian. All those people that killed people, all those crusades, they were just men acting on their own interests. They weren't acting on it. Well, they say they were working in the interests of God. God didn't contradict them. Now, I also asked you what would disprove your theory. You didn't come up with that. I'll tell you what something would have disproved my theory. If when Donald Trump had the Bible in front of that church, a great big thunderbolt that came along, went BAM! And there's nothing left but his shoes and his lips and a puff of smoke, I would have become theist that second. All over the world, atheists would have dropped to their knees saying, how did we ever doubt you? But it didn't happen, sadly. So we see no evidence of God. The only evidence we've got of God, and people say, well, it's got to be a God, because there's God of the gaps. God of the gaps doesn't work. Newton thought of the God of the gaps. He thought that the only thing that keeps the planets apart, Mercury and Jupiter and all that was got to be God. 100 years later, he was disproven. But even secular scientists can invent something because it's convenient, like the ether, which we once thought light traveled through. But when it was no longer needed, science ditched it. And we don't need God to increase our understanding. In fact, it actually hinders our understanding. There's nothing in what you said, and I have read your book. I was the guy in the UK that bought it, right? There's nothing in your book that increases our understanding of science. Yeah? There's nothing in your book that will take us any closer to a cure for malaria. It's just the vanity of theists who think that they've got a little divine lock on the truth. And no, you haven't. I'm sorry, you haven't.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kelvin. And thank you, Mr. Reid, for your wonderful presentations and keeping it clean without personal attacks. I must appreciate that personally myself. We're going to go ahead and move on to the question and answer portion. We're going to ask that anybody that has a question address the particular person you are asking the question to and be concise. And please, most importantly, get to the question. This is not the time for rebuttals. That'll come later.
Yeah.
So that being said, do we have any questions here on site? All right.
Let him hand you the mic. Hand him the mic. Got a cord on it so he can handle the cord.
All right. Just in a couple, 2 or 3 sentences or less.
Who's directed to?
Both.
Okay.
So whoever wants to go first, just in a couple sentences, 2 or 3 sentences or less. I just believe that the Big Bang happened maybe by a god or maybe by elements in the universe, and it happened. And then there hasn't been any god around since then. That god started the ball rolling. And so my question to you is it physically or chemically possible to have a Big Bang and to have all our billions and trillions of planets and stars out in space that our telescopes are looking at? Is it physically or chemically possible for a Big Bang to actually happen, at one time, 4 billion or 15 billion years ago, whatever it was? And that's when I think God came into action. It was like the start and the finish.
So your question is?
So my question is, I'll repeat it. Do you think it's chemically or physically possible or otherwise that a Big Bang can happen? And don't make it too complicated for us, because I don't understand complicated.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Reid, if you could go ahead and respond first, and then we'll go to Mr. Matchett.
Yes. Well, initially, as far as the scripture is concerned, there was the void. Now, a void is different than space. Space has in it three-dimensional space-time. It's got quantum foam. It's got a lot of stuff. Even empty space, as it has quantum fields through which quantum particles fluctuate and migrate. Space has a lot of stuff in it. Empty space has a lot of stuff in it. Now, a void is devoid of everything. And you could imagine that at a singularity, the universe started to expand, and right now it's a big balloon. And at the event horizon of the universe, it is still propagating into a void. There's no scientific way of projecting before the Big Bang, but we can postulate as to what the universe is expanding into. And by the way, there's many theories in terms of how the universe works. The event horizon of the universe expanding into the void is full on the surface, has quantum entanglement particles, where to even space-time itself is emergent through quantum mechanical entanglement. And so there is no known way to project something like that. Now, there's a couple of theories that came out, and they talk about the bounce. The universe would expand, gravity would take over, and it'd come back down to a singularity. It's called the big bounce, and then it'd go out again, and so it undulates. Okay, every trillion years or something like that. And then the other theory is that it's unbounded, that it will expand forever. And right now we're kind of like in a sweet spot where the universe is expanding, not too fast, not too slow, kind of just right. Again, the parameters are geared to sustain light. And physicists themselves will tell you it appears as though the universe was designed. Somebody designed this because the parameters, the physical parameters, are so precise and absolutely necessary not to have the bounce, not to have the big crunch, so that atoms formed, solar systems formed, galaxies formed, and we ended up on a planet suitable for life. Anyway, you say, is it possible? Not under any physical theory that anybody is aware of. Is it possible that it came from some other means than an infinite energy singularity? That is the common consensus. And like I said, human beings, there hasn't been a significant advancement in theoretical physics in 100 years. We've hit the limit in terms of what we can understand. But we do know some basic things, and I based my argument on scientific principles to prove the existence of God. So the answer is we don't know of any other theory other than the one that is obvious that we can see when we look up at the stars.
I would answer that pretty much the same. There are, not that I'm a theoretical physicist in any way. I know there is the big the bounce theory, the ever expanding thing. The thing is, we don't know, right? And there are various theories, including the ones Mr. Reid's put forward. I also don't know of any theorists saying that there was a creation, and I think fans of Mr. Stephen Hawking will disagree with you about scientific breakthroughs, theoretical breakthroughs in the past 100 years. Also including the Hugh Everett multiverses idea and string theories, etc. But I think, like I said before, this controversy amongst physicists is not geographical and it's not cultural. It will not, the answer you get from a physicist will not depend on whether your name is Cooper or Kumar, right? Whereas with theists, you will get a very specific answer depending upon whether they are Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Catholic, Protestant, Russian Orthodox, whatever, right? They are hidebound by their cultural indoctrination. Go on. Any other questions? Hello?
Hello?
Any other questions?
Yeah, hi. This is Jake. Thank you for your presentation. If there is a God, this is a question for both of you. If there is a God, which God should people believe in? Jewish, Hindu, Christian, Catholic, Protestant, other, which there's several Bibles, so to speak. Muhammad, whatever. There's several religious doctrines, and they all have different beliefs as to what who God is and what form He takes.
Should I go first?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
The Abrahamic religions seem to be very consistent with each other, and through man's defective interpretation of the Spirit and defective transcription and defective interpretation, it is easy to imagine that Yahweh, Jesus, and Allah, the Trinity, are all one and the same. Much of Islam was taken from the Jews and the Christians, and the Catholic Church, I think it was in like 400 or something, the Conference of Nicaea, basically came up with a trilogy, and the Jews named it Yahweh, and then the Christians it was Jesus, and then when the Muslims came, it was Allah. And there's very good reason to believe they're all one and the same. We just got to get them to keep fighting with each other. You know what I mean? So I cannot explain the variance of human beings, but it seems to me that all of the Abrahamic religions have common threads, and that they actually might be all three talking about the same God. And that, by the way, is part of the basis upon which I, as president, will eliminate Abrahamic divisiveness. I've thought about this problem for a long time. I think I got a very viable solution. And
what do you mean? What do you mean eliminate them?
Well, there's tension between, the Christians hating the Jews for killing the Savior, and Allah is, will slit the throats of either the Jew or the Christian. I mean, there's some divisiveness out there. I think as president, I can bring them together into civility, and that is one of the things that I will do as the next president of the United States.
Are you running for president?
Yes, 2028. I'm the only one in the country that is offering what the American people want to buy.
The Holy Trinity.
Okay, that being said, Kelvin, let you take it.
Well, my first answer to the question is that most people don't get a choice on which God that they choose. It tends to be whatever your family's got. In fact, when you choose religion, or you don't actually choose, your religion and your God is pretty much as arbitrary as which sports team you support. For example, I could, you're going to support something like the Chicago Bulls or the Red Sox or something like that because you're in Chicago and it's what your family supported and all your peers support. And so you go to that, you support that particular sports team, and you become a Christian, a Lutheran, or a Baptist, or a Catholic, or whatever, because that's what your culture says. You don't really, very, very, very few people cross over to become a Muslim or Christian. Most people just go with the slot that they've been allotted in life, and they follow their cultural thing, which is why you get such geographical geographical congregations of different theistic beliefs. Muslims would be more concentrated in the Middle East and in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, etc. Whereas people in Italy are more likely to be Catholic. People in Ireland are more likely to be Catholic. People in Germany are more likely to be Lutheran, etc., etc. And it's generally it's the same thing as you go forward with your sports team. You don't really get that much of a choice. But if you had to choose, I would go for Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, because they hold a big party once a year in Norway, because it's it's on the statute books, right? 5% of your income, right, has got to go to religion, right, in Norway. And what they do is, if you join the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster and give them your 5%, they have a huge party every year where there's free beer. Which, I mean, I'm sorry, a glass of wine and a bit of bread on Sunday doesn't go into like having a huge party with a load of Norwegians once a year. So if you had to choose, Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, that would be my choice.
Okay, thank you for your answers, gentlemen. We're going to go to Charlie now. We missed him last time, so we'll get him up here again. Charlie, go ahead.
All right. I'd like to ask Mr. Reid. You supplied us with a long list of the attributes of God. Specifically, you said God is all-knowing, for example. Now, scientists would administer an IQ test if God was a corporate body and give him an IQ test to determine his knowledge. How did you arrive at the assertion, the conclusion, that God is all-knowing? It's not a corporate body.
Well, it basically has to do with circumstantial evidence. And we asked ourselves the question, what would a God have to know in order to fine-tune the universe to support life? And by the way, the theory goes along the line that not only has the graviton not been detected, but there is another quantum particle that I named the spiriton. And spiritons are bounded together like chromodynamics to create consciousness, to create mind. The God's mind was infinite, still is, whereas humans have limited brains and a limited number of spiriton particles that I believe make sense to be bounded for forming consciousness. But just on a simple level, the universe is exceedingly complex, but it all fits together magically. And the physical parameters are fine-tuned to 40 decimal places. If we talk about intelligent design, you have to be pretty much all-knowing to be able to design a universe with all of these attributes. So it's circumstantial evidence.
Follow-up question?
Sure.
There are 84 different bodies in space, planets and asteroids. And you're telling me the universe is finely tuned? Look at our solar system. Where do you see finely tuned? All the planets, all 8 of them, are radically different.
Oh, yes, there are things that are
how do you
formed.
claim
And
that's finely tuned?
the parameters of they're constants, okay? They're physical constants. And without them being precisely set, the universe wouldn't exist. There would be no atoms. There would be no life. Now, what you're talking about is the materialistic part, that things can be formed by random processes. There's dust, it concentrates, forms the sun, that kind of thing. What I'm talking about is giving the universe a quantum mechanical mathematical order in the first place, and then defining the physical constants out to 40 decimal places, and that was intelligently designed. And from there you say that God was all-knowing.
I still want to know, how was our solar system finely tuned? Things like with the asteroid belt, with
because of the gravity
going around,
such as the gravity constant. If it's off one part in a trillion, okay, think the universe just flies apart, and the solar system would have never formed. And so the entire quantum mechanics. Pardon?
You're saying the basic laws.
Yeah, basically physical laws. They had to have been finely tuned. And physicists themselves will admit it all appears to have been designed. Of course, they're not going to buy a God, because that'll kick them off their pedestal as being the most intellectual thing in the universe. But nonetheless, they do agree it appears to have been designed because of a very complex quantum mechanical mathematical order in the first instance, and then in the second instance have finely tuned parameters, which makes it all possible, which makes it all work together.
One quick follow-up. Why are there four forces?
Okay, we've got other questions to get into as well, Charlie. And I'm going to ask that our responses are as brief as possible. And I know that they can get spun out of control, but we're trying to get through some time limits here as well. So, Charlie, we'll come back to that follow-up question of yours after we hear from Jake.
I'm just wondering why an all-knowing God would need to fine-tune anything, but anyway.
The postulation is that...
Okay. All right. Calvin, we'll get to that in just a second. Let's let Jake go ahead.
Oh, my question is, if you can prove scientifically the existence of God, then why is science so inexact? For example, I've heard that, there are just as an example, you go to a doctor can predict that a patient will die within has diabetes or cancer or some serious illness. They'll be dead in 6 months. The patient ends up living for another 20 years. Conversely, I heard one story of a teacher who went to the doctor for an annual checkup. The doctor gave her a good bill of health. A week later, she ended up dying of a heart attack. So why is science so? If God is behind, if science is controlled by God, then why is science so inexact?
It isn't.
Well, I postulate to begin with that the human mind is not capable of understanding the why and the how of the quantum mechanical mathematical order. Now, let me give you an example. The photon. We look at a photon traveling from a galaxy 13 billion years away from us. Now, if you're in the photon's reference frame, it takes zero time. It's instantaneous. The emission and absorption of that photon is instantaneous. Humans can't get their minds around these kinds of things. We simply, with our four-dimensional brains, cannot understand the how and the why. Again, but we can measure and we can quantify, and we do so with spectacular accuracy. And I don't want to belittle that, but about 100 years ago, we reached a wall. And intellectually, we have not been able to go beyond the Derrick equation. Okay. Now, and so it's now my proof. Remember, I start at the beginning. More likely than not was the standard of proof, and I used a lot of circumstantial evidence. The resurrection of Christ was more specific because we had eyewitnesses who went to the death. And so That was not circumstantial. That was direct evidence. Okay. But by and large, the argument that I made, looking at the mechanical, quantum mechanical mathematical order to the extent that we understand it, provides ample circumstantial evidence to prove more likely than not that there is a God.
Okay, thank you for that response. Okay, before we go back to Charlie, we've got one here in house.
All right. You say 1 in 40 million, and now you're saying 1 in 40 places to the right of zero. How? I have a question about science and religion. There's more and more religion in the schools. I guess you're for that. And you're for less and less science. Is that correct?
Absolutely not.
All right. Okay.
No, we as president, I will eliminate the federal student loan program. And if the Senate declares that there's a critical need in this country, we would funnel scholarship money, no strings attached, to the best of the best to go into the STEM areas of education. We cannot enslave our students with student debts when they come out of college. That's the first thing we can't do. And if Congress decides that there's a critical need, then we pony up some scholarship money for the best of the best students. And right now we're talking about, I think, 4 areas that is necessary for the future. And that includes quantum computing, AI, robotics, and fusion reaction. These are the 4 areas that we must improve our technical skills. And so if Congress says fund students that want to go into these areas, I'd be all for that. I would support that. If Congress says it's a critical need, I would support no strings attached scholarships, best of the best students to go into the STEM, the technical areas.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reid, for that response. Okay, before we do have a follow-up there, but I didn't want to overlook the question from your opponent. Why would an all-knowing God need to fine-tune things?
Otherwise, it flies apart. There is no universe. Atoms don't form. Galaxies don't form. Solar systems don't form. None of it forms.
Why did you just get it right the first time?
He did get it right the first time.
Then you want me to find
like I said, at T0.
My question to you actually was just supplemental to the last question. If you were elected, would you be in favor of teaching creationism in schools as a biological model?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I think that, the libertarians, as soon as they find out I'm a Christian, they're going to pull out their pitchforks and try to burn me at the stake, I'm not sure that the existence as God has been proven sufficiently to warrant its introduction into a public school. Private schools, that's they can pretty much do what they want. Now, again, my proof is based upon, number 1, circumstantial evidence, and that it's more likely than not. And with the new revelations in quantum mechanical theory, some judges may say, well, it's a plausible theory, and the student should be able to hear it, not in terms of indoctrinating religion, but in terms of offering the students the concepts that I disclosed in my book, for example. And so I would not be open to indoctrinating students with religion, but in terms of offering them a different perspective from a technical point of view, I think that would be something that a judge might say, hey, that's kind of okay because it makes sense. And so that's it. So no, I'm against mixing church and state, but if it's a plausible theory, and you can convince a judge, then, have at it.
So you think you're right, but not enough to put your political career on the line for it.
Oh, no, like I said, it's circumstantial evidence, and it's more likely than not.
Yeah, but
it's not certain. It's not proven science.
No. All right, guys, we're going to have to, Charlie, you've gone before. I know, Kelvin, you've had the floor for a while. Jake, you've had a question. We're going to have to open up the floor now for rebuttals, because it is about 7:05, and I just figure it's probably a good time to get him started. Do you have a rebuttal, Charlie, I take it?
No, I had a question.
Well, we're going to shut question time down now because we are getting 25 minutes. We do have two speakers who are going to give their final remarks. Jake, you've already had a question, so I'm going to pass on you at this point. And Charlie, I'm going to pass on you on the questions now because I think we all have got to get down to rebuttals. Who's got a rebuttal around here? You got a rebuttal? I do. And I'm going to go about 5 minutes or so on mine. And then if anybody else does, we can always go back. If I'm the only rebutter, we'll then go back to. All right, Mike, then we'll go next. All right. Who else has got a rebuttal? Mike, I've been working on my speech for a while. All right. I'm going to get up front. And
are you going to read AI to us again?
Actually, no, Charlie, because I use it to help me with my own thoughts on this.
Oh, that's good.
I'm going to switch cameras on.
I want to know what the computer tells me.
I'm going to switch the video on this one to the microphone so you can see me a little better.
The AI God.
All right, now there is an encyclical on that by things. The thing is, I think both you and Derrick, and both Kelvin have got it wrong. You see, it's not a matter of predicting whose God is, but let's go into something else. I'll take you one step even further, Derrick, Michael Reid. I believe the Christian God's the one that's the right place. And the thing is, Christianity does invite an investigation about stuff. It does not ask us to turn us off or reason. It asks us to examine the evidence and decide what we do with Jesus Christ. It asks us to examine the evidence and decide what we will do with Jesus Christ. The deal is Christianity is supported by moral, historical, scriptural, personal, and spiritual evidence. The case is heightened by the insights of C.S. Lewis, Josh McDowell, Ivan Panin, Fulton Sheen, Billy Graham, and of course the testimony of millions of changed lives around the world. You see, the first thing is right from the moral argument of mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. Every person has a sense of right and wrong. That is, there's an internal moral code.
You're frozen again.
Good.
You're frozen again, Tim.
He just reads AI to us.
Well, isn't it a coincidence that Tim's God, Tim's version of which God to choose, just happens to be the one he was brought up in? Yeah. Isn't that a wonderful coincidence? Nobody's ever brought up in the true God. The odds of that is after about 6,000 different religions and gods. What are the odds that they happen to be the one that you grew up with being the right one?
It's culture.
Yeah. You see, I could make a really great case. The best sports team to support would be Liverpool Football Club. I could say that it has the greatest anthem. I can talk about its triumphs and its tragedies, its fight with the Murdoch press. But at the end of the day, you're going to turn around and say, yeah, you're only saying that because you come from Liverpool. And you'd be right. Right? And you can make a case for the Chicago Bears or the Red Sox, and it's the same as true. You grew up with that culture, and you say that's the best sports team to support.
Sorry about that, guys. I know we lost our internet connection here. I'm going to be very brief and keep going here for just a minute. Basically, Christianity is the identity of Jesus. He claims divine authority. He claimed to be the way to the Father. And C.S. Lewis said it's this way. He is either a lunatic, a liar, or the Lord. The question becomes, who do we say that Jesus is? In his book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh McDowell, Christianity is rooted in public history, not myth. It involves real people and places: Jesus, Pilate, Jerusalem, crucifixion, burial, and the early church. McDowell emphasizes manuscript reliability, eyewitness testimony, archaeological support, and fulfilled prophecy, and the resurrection of Jesus. The resurrection is a central claim. If Jesus does not die, Christianity collapses. If Jesus did rise, Christianity demands a verdict. The resurrection is the decisive evidence. The disciples were crucified after the
Froze again.
difficult to explain without the resurrection. The resurrection is apparently every person to decide who Jesus is. Ivan Panin argued that the Hebrew and Greek scripture contain deep numerical patterns. He especially focused on patterns involving the number 7. Panin believed these beliefs show divine design in the biblical text. These should be used as supporting evidence, not the whole foundation of truth. His work suggests that scripture may contain order beyond ordinary human authorship. And Fulton Sheen talks about the hunger for the human soul, emphasize that man is not merely a body of appetites, but a soul made for God. He argued that modern people seek happiness and pleasure, power, money, and success, yet often remain restless. Sheen's message supports the Christian case by showing that Christ answers not only the mind, but the deepest hunger in the human heart. Christianity is not simply a theory of belief, it is a life to be received. Billy Graham preached that Christianity comes down to a personal decision about Jesus Christ. He emphasized sin. I'll be done in a second. He emphasized sin, the cross, repentance, faith, and the new birth.
Are you a Christian?
Okay? And the testimony, basically where it really boils down to, is in the testimony of changed lives. I've known hundreds and hundreds of people who believe this stuff and whose lives have been radically transformed by the message and the philosophy of Christianity. And there, I will rest my case. Thank you.
But I agree with everything that you said. My premise here today was that I was going to try to prove the existence of God by science and law.
Derrick, we got we get to talk. All right, now. Go ahead.
What you missed, Tim, when you were frozen, isn't it a wonderful coincidence that the religion that you chose to believe in happens to be the one you were brought up in?
Out of order, Calvin. We're going to get you the final remarks. Okay, go ahead and now let me get.
This is the rebuttal section.
This is the rebuttal
gallery. So I thought Jesus and God were two separate things.
Hold on a minute. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
I thought God and Jesus were two different things.
Yeah.
And I think that's what most people, somewhat educated people, thoughtful people would think. So, thank you for the sermon, Tim, on Jesus. Who's a socialist, a small guy. And, seemed like he said all the right things. Did Jesus say anything bad? Good social.
Slaves should obey their master.
Hold on a second.
Hey.
Just a reminder to our everyone in attendance, this is a rebuttal period. They don't require a response.
He did ask a question.
No, Kelvin, wait till the end.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your response if Jesus did anything wrong. Anyway, I'm going to go with my thoughts that the Big Bang happened by maybe a god or maybe with the ether and chemicals and physics and all that, and it just happened and everything evolved like Darwin said to this point today. And whether you're Jew, Christian, Hindu, what have you, Buddhist, they all have a god or several, and so they're all about the same type of person that all these different religions look to. They have different names, but hopefully all those gods are, pretty moral and ethical because us humans do a lot of bad things. Anyway, thanks for the in-depth information. And Tim, there is a difference between Jesus and God.
Thank you.
Hey, Charlie,
Thank you for that. Charlie, we're going to go with you.
Charlie,
All
go
right,
ahead.
I'd like to initially thank both of our speakers for the time and effort that they put into this program tonight. And maybe we'll have a meeting again sometime later in the future. But basically, my remarks will focus on Mr. Reid, who maintains that because there's a finely tuned universe, there is a God. And he states he could do so on the basis of using circumstantial evidence only, not direct evidence. This is a variation of the thing that is called, is there a gardener? Now, if you come along and you come across a garden with plants and flowers and vegetables and so forth, and then you automatically, somehow they maintain, you could say that, there must be a gardener. Not only do they say there must be a gardener, they begin to describe him. Well, he's 180 pounds, he's 6 feet tall, he uses farm implements, and that's what I mean. That's what I mean. There's questionable validity to this approach to describing. That's when first of all, you don't even know if you have an entity, and then you make a long list of the attributes, and then it's a variation also of truth by revelation, which permeates almost all religious discussion. That, I had a revelation that the gardener is this, or the gardener is that, and so forth. And that's what scriptures are largely. The writings of people who allegedly claim to have a revelation regarding the attributes and the activities of the conduct of the gardener. That's what I mean. So you've got to be cautious about using it. I'm not precisely certain if I believe it has any validity, but once again, thank both you guys. Maybe we'll have to do this again in 6 months or so. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, like I said, these are rebuttal times. They don't require a response. Okay, we'll go with you, Jake.
Jake, you're next. Unmute. Jake, unmute. You're next.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for your talk. There was an old Woody Allen movie called Bananas. Right in the middle of it was this little cigarette commercial. Father, do you have a light? Smoking in a church? Here, try one of these. New Testament, 2 cross cigarettes. Try one. They're flavorful and they're mild. New Testament cigarettes. I smoke them. He smokes them. I just thought I'd throw that one out there. Anyway, to the what is your name? I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. You're running for president. Yeah, I don't think you can prove mathematically or scientifically whether God exists or not. I should say, my father was I was born Jewish. I was raised Jewish. I consider myself an atheist, but I don't think that there is a God, but I don't really care one way or the other. People have faith is something which it's an individual thing. People have the right to believe in it, or they have the right not to believe in it. It's not something that you can define that someone can define for the person from the outside. My father grew up speaking Yiddish, but he wasn't religious. He always thought the religion was a bunch of hocus pocus. You mentioned that you believe in that as president, you would support artificial intelligence and data centers and fusion energy. Well, first of all, I think there should be a moratorium on not necessarily artificial intelligence, but these big data centers, at least until we can figure out a way of protecting the environment and keeping the costs down. Costs are too high, both financially and environmentally, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Secondly, when you're talking about nuclear fusion, that's been tried before and it doesn't work. And I don't think anyone can make it work in a sustainable manner. And okay, that's as I say, people have the right to their own beliefs, but they don't have the right to force their beliefs on other people. And I agree with you that religion should not be taught in schools, in public schools. In private schools, they can do pretty much whatever they want, but not in public schools. Oh, one other thing I want to mention. There was a book that came out years ago entitled Reagan, God, and the Bomb. I don't know the author of it. The Christian fundamentalists who surrounded Ronald Reagan came out with this basically, and there's some support. There's some people here now. The point is, they took the story of the apocalypse and the rapture at the end of the New Testament, and turn it into a blueprint for nuclear destruction. In other words, the theory is if they speed up the end of the world, Christ will come back that much faster. It's a loony philosophy. There were some Catholic priests who came along and denounced the philosophy as misinterpretation of the scriptures. But that's one of the things that's running behind this going on behind the scenes in propelling our ongoing nuclear arms race. Anyway, thank you for your talk.
Okay.
Okay, we got
just a little thing. You know your.
Calvin, we still have rebuttals.
Okay, it's supplemental to what the man just said. You know your present Speaker of the House believes that as well.
You're right now, Calvin. You'll get a chance to go when we get your final say.
Closing arguments, and you can get to that.
Jake, you already went once. You're not letting
No more. This is the last in rebuttal.
Okay, go ahead. You got the last.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the idea that the universe was created so perfectly. Well, okay, and that when I hear about different takes on God and religion, I'm taken back to my University of Chicago education, where we studied what different prophets, and they are not God. Jesus is not God. He's one of the prophets that talks about love one another. You go to any one of the religions in the world, it's a good idea to have the idea that there's a God out there, maybe help us focus. If there is a God, for me, it's loving energy. It's positive energy. And that all the prophets that I studied talked about love one another as you love yourself. Love one another. Sometimes better than you love yourself. Be to ourselves. We need to love one another.
Okay.
To others.
And do what that is.
Now we get into rebuttals.
Okay,
Calvin, on
thank
you.
for all the rebuttals. Now we're going to get into the closing comments.
Okay. Well, just say
Please hold on a second, Kelvin. We got about 5 minutes to cover both of you, so please let's make it as brief as possible.
Okay, go ahead, Kelvin. Now you're on, Kelvin.
Briefly, just answer the last one, the two last ones. The Armageddon, people working for Armageddon in politics, they also include your present Speaker of the House. You know, the third in command for the presidency, that guy. Right, yeah. Also, prophets are always talked about love. Well, you know, some of them talk about smiting Amalekites and Philistines and stuff like that. If you go back to the Talking Snake book 1.0. Now, I'd like to conclude with. I'd like to conclude on the non-existence of God with a joke. Okay, this old Jew dies and he goes to heaven. When he gets to heaven, he meets God, and he tells God a Holocaust joke. God doesn't laugh, and the old Jew looks at God and says, "Well, I guess you'll just have to have been there."
Good job. Good job. All right, Mr. Reid, your turn for closing argument.
First of all, I agree with C.S. Lewis and modernly John Lennox. They are pillars of objective morality. But in dealing with libertarians, I wanted to keep my focus on what scientific evidence is there available and how can that be construed for a proof of the existence of God. And so my address was more to a scientific, plausible explanation for God Almighty. And that was the intent of my address. Listen, gentlemen, I hope the pleasure was not all mine. I really enjoyed the talk, and thank you all for having me.
Okay, well, thank you to both of our presenters. Consensus so far, from what I've heard, is it's a tie here. And just a personal anecdote, Mr. Reid, I personally am a libertarian. I'm the first libertarian elected to Chicago public office. And I don't want to take pitchforks out because you're a Christian, just because you're a bit verbose. But before we cut out, we've got just a couple more minutes to go before we're going to be pushed out the front door here. I want to remind everybody that our next meeting will be on June 20. We're going to cover national health insurance, Medicare versus Medicaid versus Affordable Care Act, or whatever's left of it, and the movement towards a single payer, which is called euphemistically Medicare for all for Americans. And that discussion will be led by Michael Derrick. So thank you once again for everyone else. We're going to close it down here. We can go ahead and consider this meeting of the College Complex as adjourned.
Okay, Charlie, you want to take over the hosting duties right now?
Oh, I think we'll close.
Okay.
I don't mind chatting for a bit. You want
all right, leave it up.
Just all right. I'll leave it up. I'll bring it to your host. I'll let you make your host.
Send me a video.
I will. It'll be up fairly quickly. All right. Yeah. All right. In closing, let me stop the recording here real quick.
I was going to say, why don't Tim?
Yes.
And Derrick, why don't you make a video? Derrick, make a video. Your platform speech running for president. And
I have a nutshell speech already available. It's my address at the California Libertarian Party convention last year. In February this year.
All right, I just thought if you wanted to do another one.
We heard most of it.
Okay, gentlemen, remember Proverbs 18:2. A fool is not interested in understanding, but only in the revealing of his own mind. Thank you very much. Have a good
Calvin, they asked him, Jesus.
Take care, everybody.